Well, Courtney, always love chatting with you, of course. So today we're talking about motion. We're talking about the reports that you use with motion, the things that you find are the most useful for you. Before we go ahead and dive in, can you help me understand what's the way that you feel like motion has revolutionized really what we do here at Foxwell Digital for our clients and for your clients at your own company?
Yeah. So I'm such a visual learner just in general. And so I think one of the best things for me about motion is being able to visually see how the creative is performing and like what's working and where. And you can also customize pretty much anything that you could possibly want in terms of a bar graph or a line graph or comparison, and being able to customize all of that into exactly what you need is really helpful for me to make the right decisions. And then also I use motion pretty much every month with every client for like monthly reporting and kind of showing my clients what's working, what's not. I use it for my own, like I create creative for my clients as well. And so I even use it just internally for me to know what hooks are working or what, middle part of the video is working. And I can kind of use the bits and pieces of like my video to really see like what's working and be able to make iterations on it. And a lot of this data might live in Ads Manager or Tripleware or wherever else, but being able to see it visually really helps me understand it and like be able to fully grasp what I'm looking at and then make decisions based off of that. And then, it's not just creative, but it's landing pages, or I can look at what types of creative are working. So not like the creative itself, but I can see, are reels working better, or carousels, or static images, or graphics, or UGC, or whatever that may be. There's just so many different ways that you can utilize motion. And so it's helped me be a better ad buyer on my own. And then also as we like coach other ad buyers in the membership and things like that, just because you can't make decisions without data, and
Mm-hmm.
you need the data to be correct. And for me, I mean, if someone out there is not a visual learner, then like that's awesome for them. But like for me, I just really like seeing it and like being able to picture, where's the drop off at? Or did this create a fatigue? And if so, when did it fatigue? Was it 3 weeks ago? Because I can see over time, trending up. And then if it drops off, seeing, viewing it in a line graph is super helpful, or looking at something else in a bar graph is super helpful. So yeah, for me, it's just being able to really look at the big picture. At the same time, being able to like zoom into like a very specific piece of a specific creative all at the same time. And there's one platform that does that, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, the piece for me is always the what it uncovers strategically that allows you to kind of iterate upon it, not only within the ad creatives themselves and saying like, hey, this needs to be cut differently, this needs to be cut here, but also like, hey, this ad type is a different thing, right? Look at, I think there's opportunity within carousels, or there's opportunity within, like you said, reels or something different that maybe we're not experimenting with, because so much of it today is, that used to be you do a lot of targeting optimization, and today it's not really the creatives, the targeting in a lot of cases. So utilizing that as the way to find people is the best that you can do, and really a great tool. So let's go ahead and get into some of the reports that you utilize. I think there's different things that people do for onboarding versus what they do on a monthly basis or a day-to-day basis. How do you start to think about this, and what are some of those ways that you start when you're onboarding someone all the way into kind of your daily process?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have some reports that I can share on this call just to kind of show what I'm kind of looking at. But I think it's kind of a couple of different steps. So like generally when I take over an account, or if I'm auditing an account or something like that, I want to look at the creative from a big picture. So I'm not looking necessarily at first at which hook is best, but rather big picture, what are the best creatives the last 30 days, 90 days, maybe the last year. And I'm looking at like bigger picture themes. And that's kind of like the first start of that, is doing an analysis of like big themes. What's working? Is UGC better, or is like produced video better? Is video better, or are images better? Because every account is so different. And that's why I have such a strong like passion about like every account is different. And as a marketer, I always like, my answer to every question is always going to be, it depends, or let's look into it more. Because I have some accounts where UGC is working great, and then I have some accounts where carousels work, but UGC doesn't, or vice versa. And And I think every account is just so different. And we can zoom into like why we think that based on like human psychology and like macroeconomic factors and things like that. But being able to customize that like audit or that review for a client, I think is really important. So I start out really big picture, looking at just overall best performing creatives. And then from there, I might look at, okay, of the videos, which ones are the best ones? Or what are the best landing pages that are converting? Or what's of just what's in prospecting. Let's take out if it's a big retargeting brand. Let's take out retargeting because that might skew the data. Let's look only at prospecting, things like that. And so it's really like looking at it from a big picture perspective. And then as I kind of get going with the brand a little bit more, as I get to diving further in, then I can start looking at, I'll do like creator comparisons. So if we're using multiple creators and I know their names, or even if I don't, I could name them girl one and boy two or whatever. But I do a lot of like creative comparisons. And so I can compare creator one versus creator two versus creator three versus an account average. And then I can even give that data back to the creator if they're open to feedback, or if we work with them on a constant basis and say, hey, this, video is really great. We have this other product. Can you create something similar to this with this other product? Or bring it to my video editor and say, hey, this hook is like amazing. Let's try this hook with something else or whatever. But like being able to really dive super, super deep into the data. Motion is just as good for diving deep into the data as it is looking at a 30,000 foot view. And so as I kind of move along with the client, and then as like I'm about to start doing some like Black Friday prep of like what types of creatives worked really well last year, and I'll pull all of those data points from last Black Friday. What worked, what didn't, what types of hooks worked. Can I refilm something? Can I reuse something? But really getting like super deep, or as deep as I need to. I've even pulled like creative reports on specific sale periods or specific months, or if someone says, hey, like we're really wanting to push like this specific product and it's like a little different than something else, I could say, okay, let's pull the data on that product creative in the past and see like what types of stuff is working. But really it's whatever you want to make it. There's so many options and customization features. And then like the motion team has been really helpful to me. If I need something and I'm like, hey, I'm really trying to figure out something, they'll even get on a call with me and be like, hey, like talk me through what you're looking for. And then they'll help me build out something. And I've only needed that a couple of times, but like the fact that their customer service is willing to help or hop on chat and I'm like, hey, I'm really trying to figure this out. They'll help me out. And it's really, I think, like amazing just in like a software as a service type industry that they're willing to like help really customize it to make sure that their service is what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, certainly that part's been huge. I agree. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the reports that you generally love to use.
So I have a bunch of different tabs pulled up here so I can kind of show you as we're going, basically just like some different reports, give you some ideas, some inspiration on what types of charts and graphs work and what might be useful. So this is the one that I had kind of mentioned with just like types of creative. And this will help with kind of whoever's in charge of the creative strategy or like gathering the creative to know what we're working for more, what we need more of. So in this account, I'm looking at the last 365 days. Obviously, this is a super big window. So you may not need 365 days, maybe 30 days or 90 days or something can be more helpful for what you're looking for. For this brand, we don't do a ton, or I thought we didn't do a ton. Recently, we haven't done a ton of DPAs or DABAs, but we had in the past. But we found DPAs and DABAs worked better than carousels. So this one, I don't necessarily need to dive super far into like the graph itself and like the specific data, but this is really helpful to know that, we spent over $300,000 just on videos, and at 300K, almost 350K at a 2.5 ROAS. That's pretty good. That tells me that videos are important. That tells me that this brand maybe needs that, explanation from a video that can really explain the product. Whereas some brands or some products don't really need videos. Maybe some of them can be a really good mix of images or graphics or whatever. Again, this isn't like something I'm going to dive much deeper into, but really helpful for me to know where my breakout is, where I'm spending what money, and then where to invest more money. Because if I would have spent $350,000 on videos, but it was at a 1x, then I might say, okay, well, images, we only spent 8K, but it was at a 2.6. So why don't we lean more into images? Why don't we look at what images were working? And I could pull another report of just images and see of the last year or 90 days or a specific period or last holiday, last Q4, what images were the ones that converted, and we could make more iterations of those. But this is just kind of like one of like the bigger, like 30,000 foot view type graphs that I look at.
Yeah, I mean, looking at images, right? It says that there's potentially an opportunity to do even more there. So that's a great one to look at and creative type comparison. I love it.
All right. So let's move over to this is best performing last 30 days. So this is like one of my main reports that I'll go to monthly. I share this with the client. I look at this myself and just kind of see what's working right now. And, that tells me like, what can we do to improve? What should I turn off? So like looking at this, so I have it broken up by ad name. You can also break it up by a couple of different things. Creative, the copy. If I'm trying to test copy, let's say I have 5 different versions of copy and I have them named something different. I could group them by all these different things to see exactly what it is that I'm looking for. I'll go into some landing page testing here in just a minute, but so I have this out by ad name. So like, for example, these two, this beige graphic, it's the same creative, but I have it going to a different landing page. So that's why it's showing separately there. So if I were to show it by creative, it would group those together. But so just kind of give you an idea of like my naming convention. So this is just kind of a good like overall visual aspect of what is going on, what's working where. You can hover over it and see the exact name of it, so I know what it is. You can also go down here and get some more information. You can add whatever metrics that you want. So you can add pretty much whatever you want. Think of like whatever you're looking at in your ads manager already. That can be a good kind of thing to do. I can sort it by spend. I can sort it by ROAS. I could sort it by number of purchases, things like that. And then you can select up to 8. And that way you can kind of see like what's working, what's not. And this is just kind of a good thing to look at to make decisions. And this is kind of more on that micro level that we were talking about. So like this one, it's only spent $200, but it's at a 5X. Okay. So there's only one ad. I have it in one placement. So this tells me, okay, this one video did really well. Why don't I put this in other places, other placements, get more spend on it? Because at $200, it was at a 5X. So it has some potential to spend more and have a good return. Same thing with this one. Hasn't spent that much, has a good ROAS. So like this is just super macro for like decision making. And then you can look at right now it's last 30 days. I could look at, as macro, as micro as today, yesterday, this week, this month, that type of thing. So this is just kind of like my day-to-day dashboard that I use for all of my brands to kind of just see visually, which again, like this data is in Ads Manager, but it's just not as visually pleasing and it's not as easy to digest that information to be able to really like compare them all. And then also Motion does put the creatives together. So you'll see like this one has 2 ads, 2 ads, 2 ads. There should be some ones with more, but so it combines multiple creatives. If you have the same creative in 2 different places, it puts that data together, which obviously Ads Manager wouldn't do, which is really helpful for creative comparison because if I have the exact same creative in 2 places, I do care about the data in both places. That's really important for me to even just as much as like not skewing the data and like it has 2 different audiences or 3 different audiences or 4 different audiences or whatever to get that data from. So it's not kind of hindered by the audience or if the targeting is bad or something like that. So that is a benefit that Motion has that you can't do in Ads Manager is putting those creatives together. So this is the one that I was telling you about that is creator comparison. So any account where I help to manage the creative or manage the creators or the influencers, this is really, really helpful for me. And then it helps me tell my client, hey, let's get some more creative from this person because their stuff does really well. I actually reached out to this client today and I said, hey, can we reach out to Aaron? I have 5 other ideas that I would love for him to do. His videos are doing really well on ads and organic. Do you care if we like pay to get more content from him? So this one, you can add other metrics. So you can add 4 different ones. Right now I've added ROAS, thumb stop, click-through rate, and spend. You could, uncheck one and add another. But this, I think, is just so interesting to be able to see like where there's room to grow. So like, for example, so my ads on this account, we've only spent $8K, but I have the highest thumb stop ratio of any of the other creatives. So that might be something where I look at this and I say, okay, that 39.4%, that's an outlier. That means that Courtney video hooks are good. Let's go into Courtney videos only. I could create another report look at Courtney videos only, look at which thumb stops we have, and then
Mm-hmm.
figure out which hooks are best. And then I could share that with Aaron and Mariah and whoever else and say, hey, we
Mm-hmm.
found that this hook works really well. You don't have to use this hook exactly, but here's some inspiration. Can you try to make a video like this? Or maybe it's a different like voiceover, but it's like a similar like hook. So like, for example, one of the best thumb stops we have in this account, this is a dog collar company and it's a dog harness. And so one of the best hooks we have is a video from like my point of view and my dog is pulling me. And anyone who has a dog knows exactly what I'm talking about, where your arm is like being stretched out because your dog is pulling you. And it says, are your dog walks pulling you like this? And that's the hook.
Yes.
And it works really well.
I've seen the ad,
owner,
actually.
okay.
I mean, and, so for the record, yeah.
And if you're a dog owner, you see that from the walker's point of view and you're like, yeah, I do. And it's so simple and it's so short. And that whole ad is only like 10 seconds, but that's a really good hook. And that's like the best hook in the account right now. So like my next step there would be reach out to Aaron or Mariah and say, hey, can you get a video from your point of view with your dog, just of them pulling, and then do whatever you want with the video or whatever other direction we want to give them. But like taking that information from there.
I mean, I just
so
love the comparison it pulls out here. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
we talked about this. I talked about this a little bit with a few others. And the thing that it allows you to do is, I think, like we talked about, creative is really the new targeting in a lot of cases. So the minutia, you need to understand this and iterate upon it is very, very important. And motion allows you to do it so easily. This is a pretty easy report to pull together, and you could share it, like you said, directly with those people. So I think it's great. I appreciate you showing this one.
Yeah. And one more thing too, I wanted to add just on this one specifically. So this yellow one is spend, but one thing that I'll also look at is like AOV. So like instead of spend, so I'm looking at which creator, makes people want to buy like a bundle or more things. So Aaron, he's actually a dog trainer. And so he has the highest AOV and it's actually quite a bit higher than the account average. So in a lot of his videos, he's talking about like the set. He's like, you need the harness and you need the leash. And this is the leash you should get. And you should also get this. And so that's kind of like other things we could think about with like, okay, what's Aaron doing in his videos that are making people want to buy more things? Because $77 is like 2 to 3, maybe more products. So just kind of like, there's so many different pieces. So like you can look at AOV, but like what story does that tell? You can look at Thumbstop, but what story does that tell? What does that data, what is that information on the Thumbstop? How does that help you make better creatives? My point is the amount of customization options for these types of graphs and things are really helpful for making decisions and then using that, like the data, the sciencey information and pulling it into like human action items of like, hey, Aaron, can you do your thing with like, pushing multiple products, but can you start with like a before type hook? Because basically all the video was that's working, it's a before and after. It's pulling and then it's not pulling. That's the entire ad. And so maybe we could push that to Aaron and say, hey, we have this data from your videos. Can you do this hook? And that's kind of like the types of like iterations and how my brain is working when I'm using these types of graphs.
Love it.
Another one that I really like, landing pages. So anyone who's trying to scale their ad account knows that you have to work on landing pages. So this is really helpful for myself and then also to share with like our landing page and like website team of what's working. And then also you can also switch things to line graphs if you wanted to. So I could see like, if there was like a huge spike on like one ad or something. So just so you can like mess things around like however you want here. But for me, I like looking at it this way for this specific one, just because I can kind of see all of the landing pages that I'm running all together. So like I have a total of 12 different landing pages that I'm running over the past 90 days, but these ones are, let's see, you could sort it by, these are sorted by spend. I could also sort it by ROAS, whereas like these ones got maybe a little bit less spend, but working really well. And then again, just kind of like the last one, really diving into what does it mean that it has whatever data we're looking at. What does it mean that this one has a higher ROAS? For landing pages, we'd probably want to look at average order value. That makes sense because are we bundling? How long are people staying on the site? Whereas like this one, I wouldn't care about like Thumbstop because that's not relevant for a landing page. But, what is the add to cart to purchase ratio? I could go over here and take off spend and I could add to cart to purchase ratio. So these types of things are just like whatever it is that you're looking for, there's probably a graph that can be made to visually see what's working. So like from this one, so if I'm looking at add to cart to purchase ratio and average order value. All right. So like this one over here has the highest average order value. It's almost $100. So I look and see which one this one is. All right. I know which landing page this is. The AOV on this one is crazy. So what on this landing page is making people buy 3, 4, 5 products at a time? And like, how can we use that and put that on the next best landing page? So like this one has a really high return on ad spend, but a lower AOV. So could we move something from this $99 AOV landing page to this landing page to make it even better? And so that's all that this is like iterating and using the data that you have to make very informed decisions to like keep going on more things.
Love it.
All right, another one. We talked about creative type comparison. Best for, or this one is actually, so this one I really like. We talked about this one, creative fatigue. So I put this one in a line graph, as we know that we learned in like, what was it, like the 3rd grade? You use a line graph when you're trying to see change over time. And so this one is really helpful because if I have an ad that's like working for a long time, we all have seen, as an ad buyer, we've all seen creative fatigue, right? Like we've seen when an ad is just crushing and then like one day it just stops working. But we need to know when it does stop working, and we can catch that sooner when we look at it something like this. So like minuscule. So we could look at like last 90 days. I could also change it to last 7 days, and I could change this over here. And I could look at like a daily change, and we could start, if we start seeing, you know, a certain creative trending down, and our SOP could be like, if a creative is trending down for more than 4 days or 5 days or 10 days or whatever that SOP may be, this is like a really good way to see that. So right here, I'll have last 90 days. They're color coded. So I can look at, okay, my yellow guy here, this is like one of my better performing creatives. It just started taking off this week. This week it's doing really well. Okay, cool. Maybe that tells me I want to put it in a couple other places this week. Whereas maybe if I would have looked at this on May 11th or May 18th, where there's this yellow is kind of like trending down, maybe on May 18th, I would have been like, let me turn it down. You know, it's still working some, but let me turn it down, or whatever that may be. But like looking at it, I think all of this just really goes back into, it's so visual that it helps you make the right decisions because you're seeing the data in real time and you're seeing it, how it's performing, as opposed to a lot of times just looking at numbers. One, it can make you like go cross-eyed because you're just looking at tables of numbers, but this really helps you bring meaning to the numbers, which I think is really important. This one is one of my favorites as well. This one is super deep into the creative and it's video drop off. And so I like to look at this just to see like where people are stopping to like where they're not interested anymore. So like 30%, 15, 10, 6, that's pretty standard. Like that's pretty healthy, I think. Whereas like this one, the 25% was only 6%. So, and it tells me like the difference from average. So that tells me that this hook maybe isn't as good, but you know, maybe the rest of the video is okay. But I can kind of look here. So like, okay, this one, 14% thumbs up. That's not super great, but from 14 to 3% is a really big drop off. So like this thumb stop needs some work, or, you know, just like going through here and that this helps me kind of see what is good about my videos and what needs some work. And then once you find a winner, you know, you can use the same hook with a different video or a different hook with the same body video. And you can create, there's so many different like iterations you can make to improve on your videos, but you have to be able to see the data and know what is or isn't working before I can say, well, I like, you know, hook number 3. Well, it doesn't matter what I like because I'm not the one buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product, and I can't do that, you know. So really being able to like zoom in and say, okay, this one, 35% thumbs up, not bad. We want it to be like 40, 35, pretty good. And then this one, 21%. Okay, so that's not terrible drop off. So like this video is really strong, this Miss Elizabeth one. So can I take that? Can I put it other places? Because it's a really strong creative. Can I pair that with my best performing landing page? Can I put that in my best performing audience? Right. What can I do to improve the thumb stop from 35 to maybe 45 or 50%, and then maybe increase the 50, 75, and 100% along the way? Like, what can I do there? And these are kind of the things that I'm thinking about as I'm trying to improve like my creative process.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I think it's getting into the minutia again and really looking at, there's so many different ways to slice and dice this stuff. So this one's a really amazing one in terms of we've looked at landing pages, we've looked at types in comparison, we've looked at everything. This just even breaks down even further in terms of just video ads, which so many of us, it's the primary vehicle. No, I think these are incredible, and I appreciate you taking the time to show us the way that you dive into this deeply. And thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.